What's up, Steelers fans? Welcome back to another episode of Around the Burgh. We're here live on the Steelers ATB Twitter. I'm your host, Mitchell Wolf, here with my co-host, Shane Kubis. Shane, how you doing tonight?
Well, it's Combine week, so it's been great. So watching all the players and watching the safeties today has been a lot of fun. So doing pretty good.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've been driving today, so I've been missing most of the actual drill work, which stinks. But I mean, I think if draft is Christmas, this has to be Hanukkah, right? Just because
pretty much,
it's a week long thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's spread out. So yeah, it's a great time of year,
for sure.
Right. And then obviously with the Combine, there's a lot of NFL news going around, a lot of updates. So we'll get into that first because that's a little quicker to kind of get through. So I think the biggest thing that we need to start off with is that the Aaron Rodgers situation is continuing to situation. It's it's just ridiculous at this point. I'm really sick of it. I'm sick of him. But of course, because of that, the Steelers are one of the teams that he's rumored to be interested in if he does elect to go to Green Bay. Now, again, for those who listen on the podcast, by the time this comes out, he might have made a decision and this could all be moot. But right now, I think it's the Steelers, the Broncos, the Titans, and was there another team that he mentioned?
I think it was just those three in Green Bay, obviously staying the three. Yes. That's mostly that. Which that right off the bat, the thing that I find most interesting about this is that everybody that is being named as a team is in the AFC, where presumably he would have a much harder time getting through that conference. Sense. It's like that's why I've always said that I feel like, or I've always thought that he's either going to retire or he's going to come back and play for Green Bay and they're going to give him a new deal. Like that's really what, to me, I think it's still probably the most likely thing is one of those two.
Yeah.
But again, just why would you go to the AFC right now? Like,
yeah, I mean, Tennessee kind of makes sense because it's an easier road to traverse, but then they have to get a Tannehill, and that's a weird contract situation. But in the NFC North, like the Bears are still rebuilding, the Lions are rebuilding, and the Vikings are going to be basically rebuilding. So like, I just don't get why he would leave. I saw a report, I think it was Rappaport, that said the Broncos are willing to trade this year's first round pick, next year's first round pick, a second round pick, and something else to get him, which, I just don't really foresee the Steelers giving up more than that to get Aaron Rodgers.
No, that's the biggest thing here is like, first is what's the compensation going to have to be, right? Because as much as the Packers don't technically have a whole lot of leverage with him because he could just say he's retiring and they want to get something for him, it's still going to take a sizable amount to get him off their hands. Like they would be pretty comfortable letting him just not play for anyone else if that means they're not getting anything good for him. And the Broncos have a lot more incentive to go for it right now because their roster is very, very strong outside of quarterback right now. It really is. So if someone's going to do it, it would make the most sense for them to do it. They do have a higher pick this year than those other teams that are interested or might be interested. They have more assets to give up and not really still have a bad team. The offensive line is solid. Like, again, all that would be the place if he does want to go somewhere else. That would be the place that would make the most sense. On top of Hackett being the new coach there.
Yeah, I don't think any team aside from like maybe the Eagles has the ammunition to make this trade realistic. I'm sure there are other teams that have extra first rounders next year, but you need to trade at least 3 first round picks to get him. That's where you start the offer. And, I don't think the Steelers have that ammunition. I don't think they'd be willing to give up that ammunition. And again, like the team situation would be worse for him. So I just don't think it's realistic. And I really don't want him to come here because I'm just sick of him as a person. And
it's just, again, and I've had this conversation with people about it, and like I understand how great of a player he is. That's not really what we're discussing at this point. It's not about whether he would be good for whatever X reason. The timeline doesn't make sense. The assets you'd have to give up is going to nuke the team realistically because we're already in a position where we have key needs at places that we can't just assume we can fill with whatever money we have left after we would bring him in, right? It wouldn't be able to build a team around him that is legitimately Super Bowl contender. Like, you'll be a playoff team, pretty much guaranteed. I mean, unless we really nuke the roster as part of doing it. But what does that really get you in the AFC right now? You're dealing with Mahomes. You're dealing with, assuming the Bengals don't fall on their face, they're going to have a better roster most likely next year, and they just win the Super Bowl. Even the Titans, if they are healthy, actually, and the Ravens
Chargers,
healthy,
the Ravens,
all these, like, there's no guarantee you're going to get through the AFC, right? It just goes on and on. Like, all these teams are there where, like, they either have a more complete roster than the team he'd probably end up on, or if you do go to a team like the Broncos, you still have to get out of the AFC West.
Yeah,
which is not
going to the Broncos would just be so stupid. Like,
it's just none of it makes sense to me. Like, It's really, I think he just wants to be in the news. We know that about him at
Mm-hmm.
this point.
Yeah.
And again, if it's anything other than either returning to Green Bay on a new deal or retiring, I think it's a huge upset.
Yeah. I saw there were so many tweets that were like, Aaron Rodgers just has to, anytime there's an NFL event going on that
Right.
he's not involved in, he has to involve himself, and
He has
then
to
gets
figure out
like,
a way.
I don't know why I'm being talked about. I don't know why this came. It's like, okay, well, whatever, dude. So the other
Yeah.
news is that the Steelers interviewed Louis Riddick again for the general manager job, which is very interesting. I still think Brandon Hunt is the leader in the clubhouse, but given that
Yeah.
they gave Riddick a second interview and they interviewed some other candidates as well, they really just they're leaving no stone unturned in terms of this process. But with a second interview, that makes me think Riddick really has a realistic shot, like maybe even better than Omar Khan at getting this job, which would be
I
pretty crazy, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, like I said, I don't see the reason to interview him twice if he's not at least firmly in the discussion.
Mhm.
So especially a guy that's outside of the league right now, like you're not hiring him from someone else where you're trying to get intel or like we talked about before, trying to learn more about like what they're thinking. So yeah, I mean, I still agree with you. I think Hunt's the guy that's most likely going to be the choice here, but I mean, they clearly have enough of an interest in him that it's not a guarantee at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's now the NFL Monday Night Football booth is going to be empty if they hire Riddick
Yeah, if they do, I mean,
because now Brian Greasy gets hired as the quarterbacks coach for the
yeah, that was
49ers,
an interesting move too.
which
So
was
like
interesting. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a lot going on as far as that like movement when it comes to even like said announcing games too. It's kind of
Yeah.
getting a little bit weird too. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, but I mean, I
But
honestly like. I think I'd be surprised. I don't know if I'd be disappointed if Riddick was hired above Hunt. I think it would be it would suck for Hunt, obviously.
yeah,
Um, and this would be the case of them hiring external candidates. So, I'd love to see people oh, why aren't they promoting from within? This guy's it's like, okay, well, you can't have it both ways.
well that's like there's no we know at this point like there's no appeasing fans of
Yeah.
this team right now. Like I'm so concerned. Like it's probably going to be fun for us because we're gonna have a lot of like things to react to over the next
Hmm.
like however long we're doing this for. But like I'm concerned for the mental health of this fan base, depending on how the next couple years go, because we are not used to being in this precarious of a position.
Hmm.
And like I'm prepared for it. Like I'm not the type of fan that's going to be like, I can't believe we're not 10-win seasons. Like
Yeah.
I'm not, but a lot of people aren't in that boat, and it's going to
Yeah.
be rocky for a while.
I think as a blueprint, and this pun will be somewhat intended, is if you look at the Giants fan base, like kind of in the later Eli, early Daniel Jones, it's like and this was partially like the ownership and the management's fault, is that they never were like, all right, this year we're gonna be bad. They were like, every year we're gonna go for it, and now they're in a really precarious position and now they have a new brain trust, which is much better than the previous one, but
Yeah,
they're
like
really in a tough spot with the cap and everything. So I feel like Steelers fans might kind of go that route, which would be very concerning.
yeah, I mean, we have some resident Giants fans here with around the block, so we kind of know what they're dealing with. But like again, it's not going to be pretty. I don't think so. Pretty
Yeah.
much no matter what. So
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the combine stuff. So
mhm,
we're as if you're listening on the podcast, we're recording on Sunday night. The DBs are going through positional drills right now.
mhm.
But so almost everything's wrapped up, and I do want to say that I think this combine was annoying in that having it go so late was bad for the product and the players, because so many players opted out of everything. Like no running backs did agility drills,
Which was
barely any
smart.
linebackers did them, which
Mhm.
it's like if you want people to watch, like you have to have the product in order for more people to watch it. So what's the point of putting on prime time if nothing's going to happen?
That's the problem. Is like I think they looked at this more for like we want to put it in prime time instead of looking at why we didn't have it or why we shouldn't have it in prime time.
Hmm.
And like, granted, they should know better than that. I mean, this is the NFL. Like, it's kind of a football product. They need to have the guys go out there and do football stuff, like you
Hmm.
said. But again, it doesn't help anything realistically. Like, sure, maybe they'll have better viewership numbers. I don't know. It's hard to say right
I
now,
saw a
obviously.
tweet that said like the
But
numbers were very bad. I don't
right,
know.
so like,
I don't know if that number was real. I don't, but
who knows? But
you
I
know,
can't imagine even if it was better than the last time they televised it. Like, how much better could it possibly be?
yeah,
Like
I
you don't have to like look for like extra avenues to get a few more viewers when you're the NFL. Like you're gonna have the viewership,
yeah.
but you need to focus on making the product better, and this clearly didn't, and that's where the problem lies.
Yeah, you need to put it in a place where the most amount of on-field stuff will happen.
Yes,
Or you want
exactly.
people doing the drills and making it easier for the players to do said drills is the
incentivize
key
them.
to that.
Give them reason to say, okay, I should show out everything here. I'll have the opportunity to do that, and it's not
Exactly.
happening.
Exactly. Now, with that being said, I don't know what they did to the turf in Indy because everybody ran and set the turf on fire. It was crazy.
Listen, that the first with the receivers when I'm like, I was looking at some of these. I'm like, okay, listen, like Olave's fast, 4.26. That was the first one where I was like, okay, something isn't quite right here. Like, I think he's a very fast player for sure. Like, even on but he's not
I
sub
think
4.3.
honestly, I thought they did him dirty with how much they nerfed his
Right?
time.
Like imagine having more than a 10th second added to your 40.
Because when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's crazy. It's 4.26, but it looked like a 4.26.
It
Like
did kind of, yeah.
yeah,
And but I feel like he ran closer to like low 4.3
yeah, for
than
sure.
anything. But yeah,
But there's no way he was
4.39
slower than
is
Garrett Wilson. That didn't
no,
make any sense.
no. Like Wilson ran really well, obviously too. But like
That was shocking. Yeah.
Olave definitely, I think, is the faster player on film.
Oh
For
yeah.
sure. So like,
Mhm.
I'm not worried about too much. But yeah, some of the times just the discrepancies and like. We had what I think it was the receiver from I forget where that ran like 4.21.
Baylor,
Yeah,
Tyquan Thornton ran a
that's right. Yeah,
4.21 or
these
something. Yeah.
Baylor kids, man. This year, just
Well,
throwing that out there. Like,
so Rule and Aranda have like both talked about like we'll go find track kids and then we'll figure it out. So
I mean,
it's part of the
especially
formula, which it
like,
works. I mean, they
yeah,
won a
I
Big
mean,
12 championship.
in college, especially too. Like, if you like, they don't have to all be like
Yeah.
these amazing NFL prospects. They just have to figure it out enough. Like, but yeah, just these times in general are nuts. I mean, this is a fast class, and I
Yeah.
expected them to test well, but like some of the numbers, especially like with some of the edge players and the linebackers, one of which we know is we're a big fan of, but like it's just these guys are just straight fast, just nuts.
Yeah. I mean, there were all kinds of tweets going out about, how this is the fastest group of combine players ever. And
Yes,
I don't have all those tweets and numbers in front of me, but like the offensive linemen were all running ridiculously fast. Like you said, the defensive linemen were crazy. I mean, they had like
Jordan
nine.
Davis.
Yeah, they had like 9 receivers under 4.4 in the 4.3s and 4.2s, which has never been done before. I mean, the one guy that I think you want to mention is Christian Watson from North Dakota State, who ran a 4.38 at 6'4", 208, which was bonkers.
When I saw his initial 4.28 when that was unofficial, I was like, okay. If he didn't obviously, but like if that was even remotely close, I'm like, this dude's disgusting. Like, what do
Yeah.
you like? What people who weren't like interested in him or like still didn't have him relatively high and like not like stupid high, but in the conversation for the top 8 to 10 guys. What else does he have to show you at this point?
Yeah.
Like it's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, the caveat with all this is like it is a combine. These are on-field drills. They really shouldn't matter, but we're gonna have a bit. We're just gonna enjoy these numbers like for what they are. Like it's fun to watch people run fast. This is like it's the Olympics. It's fun to see people do cool stuff.
Absolutely, just watching these guys, and especially like some of the players. Obviously, like if you see a guy test way better than you thought, looking at him, like that doesn't mean that he all of a sudden is that athlete. Like you have to pay attention to that, but. When you see guys that you knew were really athletic, but you weren't sure just how athletic, and then you see some of these numbers, like we're going to talk about, like I have to talk about Troy Anderson.
Oh yeah, all right. Let's just go to it. Our large adult son.
Yeah, listen. When I saw 4.4 flash, I was like, oh yeah, okay.
Like, and he was the first one, so it was right out of the gate.
I'm like, we're starting with a 4.4, and it's the guy that I wanted to see run in that range for sure because I saw it. I'm like, okay. Now I'm having fun here. Like,
yeah. So
I'm also worried though because
So I'm getting his numbers pulled up. So Troy Anderson, linebacker from Montana State, 6'3", 243. Okay, so he ran a 4.42 40-yard dash official with a 1.56 10-yard split, which was unofficial, and 36-inch vertical, 10-foot and 8-inch broad jump. This all coming out to a relative athletic score of 9.98, which is not the best of the linebacker group this year because there were 3 other linebackers in front of him, which is insane.
Again, like Shadal was disgusting too. Out of like, he's a guy that I was like, if he tests super well, it's gonna be great for him personally, just like as far as his draft stock goes. But all these linebackers, I mean, even like Brandon Smith out of Penn State at 250 ran like 4.52.
Yeah.
Like what? I didn't. Like, what? I mean, what are we doing?
With the Penn State guys, I just assume they're gonna blow it up
that's
because they always
true.
do.
They do. Yeah,
but him
still,
putting on like 15 pounds and then still running like that is just crazy. Like him being Arnold Ebiketti's size and running that much faster
I
is
don't understand,
bonkers.
man. Like,
but yeah, I mean, for the crowd that wants, I mean, like I don't know if they're gonna be able to get Troy Anderson in the third round anymore. I don't know if they're gonna be able to get Leo Chenal in the second anymore. So you may need to wait until the round 4 pick to get a linebacker, which isn't the worst thing, but it's crazy with just how athletic this group was.
Yeah, like Anderson especially. Like whenever I saw that time flash, I'm like, yeah.
Okay, so I actually saw this number. This is from Alex Kozora of Steelers Depot. 31 guys under 4.4 this year, which is 2.5 times more than past years. So just wild testing. And we're talking about the 40s because that's the one that the most people did. Like,
yeah, of course.
Not a lot of people did the agilities, which was frustrating.
Yeah, it was.
But I'll talk about my other son, Zion Johnson, who absolutely blew it up.
Oh my god, yeah.
I'm not sure if he's gonna be around for the Steelers either, but he had a great day. I think his RAS was like 9.56 or something.
I think it was like almost top 50 all time for the guard position.
Yeah, it was.
Something like that.
Yeah, because he was first in the bench press. I have my numbers, my notes here for it. So he was first among the offensive linemen in the bench press with 32 reps. He was third in he was tied for 25th in the 40, which doesn't really matter for guards. He was third in the short shuttle with 4.46, fourth in 3-cone at 7.38, fourth in vertical jump at 32 inches, and tied for sixth with a 9'4" broad jump. And it was a 9.59 RAS, which is 58th out of 1,406 guards in history. Actually, it's 53 out of 1175. Gotcha. So, and it was the fourth best among the guards in this class with complete profiles. Because some of the guys did some numbers and some didn't. But he was awesome. It was so funny because comparing him to Kenyon Green, who's kind of the other contender for the best guard in the class, Green just looked sloppy. His body didn't look good. He was struggling just to get he didn't really understand what the drills were doing. And he's bigger than Johnson and put up 12 less bench press reps. He just looked a lot worse in the drills. And I mean, Johnson is just like, if you just look at him, you're like, there's no way he's over 300 pounds because there is barely any fat on him, but his legs are huge.
Yeah, he's really well built across the board.
So I was super excited about how well he did. But yeah, I mean, this entire, I guess, let's talk about the defensive line because in this group, like in this whole class, it was crazy, but perhaps none crazier than this entire defensive line because, I mean, I think we have to start with Jordan Davis, who is, I think he has the second highest relative athletic score of all time behind Calvin Johnson now, because he ran a 4.78 at 6'6", 341 pounds, and was still just jumping out of the gym like it should be illegal.
Pretty sure he had a higher vert than Traylon Burks, if I'm not mistaken, or close to it.
Yeah. I want to talk about Traylon Burks too, and from the other side, but I want to, 32-inch vertical, 10-foot, 3-inch broad jump, which was the greatest broad jump for any player over 300 pounds. And 1.68 10-yard split. So this is all for a perfect 10 RAS for a guy that, and I don't think people were like, I saw some tweets about this because, there are people kind of on both sides of this debate, and I don't think people were saying he's not athletic. It's just about how athletic can he be for extended amount of time in terms of his playing. His playing time, which I'm still not super worried about because from what I've seen, as the year went on, he was on the field more and more. His conditioning was getting better. He was on the field more in games that really matter, like the SEC Championship and the playoff. And again, those teams run the ball a little more, so that was part of it. But still, his conditioning got better as the year went on. His conditioning was great. Like, he played at 365, and now he's down to 340. I think if you take 10 more pounds off, I think he's still going to play like 75% of the snaps, and he's going to be elite for those snaps that he's on the field. So, I think that the narrative of him being, it's just a 2-down player, like, you should value that. Like, this isn't a normal 2-down player. Like, this is a Vita Vea type of player, perhaps even crazier.
Yeah, and again, that's for me. Like, I think the athleticism shows that the upside to be impactful on third down is possible. It's just we didn't see it, right? Like, we just didn't. We not only did we not,
and because
see,
we didn't have to, because
that's what we didn't have to.
Was so crazy.
That's the thing about it too, and that's why I wanted to mention was like just looking at just Georgia's team that is here, like the guys from that team, all are just putting up stupid numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Like even like Scene today and like or what I think that's how the last
Yep, Scene. That's my guy. I love Scene. Yeah, I love him.
4.38 official, I think, or
Mm-hmm.
something like
Yep.
that. Like something stupid. I'm like, all these dudes are just ridiculous athletes. And obviously, I mean, it's SEC. This team won the national championship. Not surprising, but for their defensive line to have
Mm-hmm.
this type of numbers put up, and then Walker too, as an
Yep.
edge
I mean,
guy.
and
Wow.
Walker, like just him doing the positional drills, like he could have just done that because
Right.
he's an alien. And Quay
Just
Walker was
disgusting.
crazy and Channing Tindall had great jumps too. Like I mean, every player on their defense was. I think I just saw
Just
Mina Kimes tweet like, if this team hadn't won the national championship, we would have all just been sitting here like, what happened?
I would have been like Kirby Smart needs to go.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if you don't win again, to have this much just speed
Mm-hmm.
across every like where do you go with the football when there's this much speed and athleticism
Mm-hmm.
on the field all at the same time? I mean, where you throw like the line, like who are you going to target as a linebacker? Where are you going to
Mm-hmm.
throw in the secondary? Where are you going to run the football, especially on first and second
Mm-hmm.
down? Like it just there's no surprise to me that this team was as good as it was on defense and that they were able to carry them for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the playoffs and the end of the season. But any of these, all these guys, I'd be surprised if any of them were not really good NFL players at the very least.
Yeah.
Like maybe not all of them are going to work out fully, but all of them have the really good chance of being really good NFL players.
Yeah, and the problem is like, a guy like Davis, like he overshadowed so many players like Devontae Wyatt, who's also from Georgia. Like
4.77.
yeah, had the fastest
Then
time of
like,
all defensive linemen or all defensive tackles at 6'3", 304, and like really good numbers at 9.58 RAS, but like
yeah,
he still just pales comparison. And then another guy, Travis Jones, who we both really like, had a great day at 6'4", 325.
and nobody's talking about it.
No, and he ran the agility drills and had a 4.58 shuttle and a 7.333 cone, which are fantastic guys, fantastic numbers for a guy that's 6'4", 325,
Oh yeah,
and a
right.
4.940. Like those numbers are nuts. But I saw Dane Brugler tweet that he might get himself in the first round, so that's not great for the Steelers again.
All the guys that we have been talking about, of course, go to the
This just proves that
combine.
we're geniuses and that
Right?
NFL teams
Yeah,
should hire
I'm
us.
gonna take it that way, but then cry whenever we don't get
Yeah,
any of them because
yeah,
the Steelers are like, we'll take whatever.
yeah,
I do think Zion is the guy that I think is the most likely of the players we talked about that
yeah.
will be in play. Like obviously, I hope that for our sake that if he's still there and there's no other like really like glaring players that have fallen,
Mm-hmm.
that he's going to be available for us at least. But the way he played the combine and the Senior Bowl, I don't even maybe even 20 might not be low
Yeah,
enough
I
to
still
or high
think
enough to
that
go.
I think he's in play because he is a guard, and obviously guards are
Yes,
not valued super
that's the
highly.
biggest thing.
And
Yeah.
also, and this is kind of why I get where some people have Green above him. Like Green, if Green develops and builds his frame better, and he's younger, so he has a bit more time to improve. Like Johnson is maxed out. Like he is what he is, and he's great. But like,
Right.
there's a chance that like if everything goes right with Green, like he could be like an all pro player every year. And like Johnson, I think could be an all pro player like every few years. But he's just not that crazy. Like he is what he is right now, and that's like a 10 to 12 year Pro Bowl starter.
That's the thing, right? Yeah.
And the question, and this is the kind of the question draft is like, do you want the safe thing or do you want the thing that maybe could be a Hall of Famer? And like for the Steelers, like I'm perfectly fine with them taking Zion Johnson, being like, all right, you're the left guard for the next 10 to 12 years.
And for me too, like especially offensive line, I feel like in general, this is just kind of what I believe. Obviously, so I'm not saying this is what teams are going to do per se, but with the way the league is with offensive line right now, I'm taking the guy that I'm very confident is going to be a starting caliber player
Mm-hmm.
at worst, and at best the Pro Bowl-esque type of talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because with Johnson, like I said, you look at him and you go, okay, there's a really good chance he's going to be my starter for a decade, right?
Mm-hmm.
Green could very well do the same thing and maybe, like you said, has the potential to become a better pro than him.
Mm-hmm.
But especially looking at the way he kind of performed this week compared to Johnson and some of the other guys, there's concern like, does he bust possibly?
Mm-hmm.
And not just bust and like he's an okay player for like.
And honestly, a lot of
yeah.
guards that have gone in the first round have been busts. Like
They
you
have,
think about
yeah.
Jonathan Cooper, Chance Warmack, Lakin Tomlinson has kind of turned his career around.
He
But
has,
he
yeah.
wasn't really,
It was early for him at the time, but like
yeah.
he did figure it out. But
Yeah, but a
still,
lot of the
yeah.
guards that go high, they kind of have a trend of busting. So that's, but I do want to pivot to this Treylon Burks thing because I think that this is really interesting, and I don't think he was really ever a target for the Steelers. I don't see them taking a wide receiver in the first
not
round.
early enough. No.
But he had so he's a 6'2", 225 receiver from Arkansas, getting a lot of DK Metcalf and Debo Samuel comparisons. And the problem was, so he runs a 4.55 40, I just had a 33-inch vertical and a 122-inch broad jump. His hands are 9 and 7/8 inches, and the problem was that going into this week, there was like, oh, he's gonna have 11-inch hands. He's gonna run a high 4.3 40. He's gonna have like a 42-inch vertical, and obviously none of that happened. And none of his numbers are bad for a receiver his size, but now I just feel like it's a little unfair to him because now it's like, oh, he didn't meet the expectations, so now he's, oh, he's a bust. It's like, and I like Daniel Jeremiah made a point of it to say like, if you like test his flying 20, which is the final 20 yards versus like the first 20, like that flying 20 is going to be incredible and like one of the best because like once he gets up to speed, like not many people can catch him because of how big he is. And from what I've seen, like, and I've watched a decent bit of him, like speed is not a concern on tape. Like he can get you deep. That's not a problem. And like at his size, he is a very good athlete in space. So, this is kind of the other side of the combine coin is that, if there are bad numbers, take it with a grain of salt. And also like, if they're really bad, go back and check the tape. It's like, all right, was this an issue for him that was on tape and now it's presenting itself in athletic testing? And for me, I don't think it was. I think it was just a case of overinflated expectations, which happened to Aiden Hutchinson as well a little bit, but his numbers were still excellent.
Really
I think he had a 9.5 plus RAS as well. Just he didn't have, all time, numbers and the agilities and the jumps and everything. He was still very good for a man of his size, but just kind of the other side of the coin for this.
And I think with Burks too, like the thing you have to, and this is just the general, I think, wave that everyone should take this approach with the combine. And I mentioned it before. If you're watching a player and you go, I really like this guy, but I'm not 100% sure how good of an athlete he is. I'm not sure if that's going to be a problem. If he goes to the combine and he blows it up to the point where you're really surprised, it probably means he just tested very well compared to your expectations. Like you don't want to assume, okay, well now he's a great athlete, right? Same thing goes to the opposite though. Like if a guy looks like a phenomenal athlete on tape and he doesn't test quite as well, if you go back and watch and you still get the impression, which is the same, which in the case with Burks, he looks like a phenomenal athlete on the field. And he maybe is one of those guys that just takes him a little bit to get going. He is a build-up speed type of player, which that isn't necessarily a bad thing in any way, especially the way that he plays. But his testing numbers aren't going to reflect necessarily what you see on film. And that's where you need to make sure you're not trusting the combine more than you're trusting what you saw on the field.
Yeah. And so one example for me is like Charleston Rambo, who I mentioned in our previous episode about being a target for the Steelers in their third round because I was like, oh, this guy's a vertical burner, like he can get you deep. And his 40 was like high 4.5s or something.
Yeah,
so
like mid 4.5, I think.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, that's
4.57 actually.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, that's very strange. So he might be a guy, and we were talking about this with Kyle Hamilton before the show, is where he might just be the guy where his speed doesn't change when he puts on the pads. Whereas that does tend to happen with some guys where, they're great in the underwear spandex stuff, but when they put pads and a helmet and everything else on, they, lose a tenth of a second or so. The other big thing we probably should talk about is the quarterbacks at the combine, because obviously everybody's connecting Steelers quarterbacks in this draft class.
Yeah.
The combine's a great event for quarterbacks because they're throwing on air to receivers where there's one route and nobody's covering them. So what were your thoughts on the quarterbacks in this year's class of the combine?
So really, again, like nothing that happened was surprising to me. Like nothing I saw was like, oh man, I didn't think that X player was going to run, or like I will say Ritter ran better than I thought he would.
Yes.
He tested better as an athlete a little bit, like because we talked about it, and like neither of us are the biggest Ritter fans by any means. And his athleticism he was a plus athlete for the position, I felt like, but not like I didn't think he was going to be in the 4.5. So I thought he was like a mid 4.6 guy.
Yeah, so that was crazy. But then he was of the quarterbacks who did 3-cone drill, which there weren't many, but he was last in the 3-cone drill.
Yeah, his lateral quickness. Isn't really
but he's
there.
I mean, and you see that on tape. Like once he turns the corner on like some of the
he can get
towers
moving.
They're on.
For sure.
Oh yeah, he has big long runs for sure.
He's just not going to be that guy that like makes people miss in space or like, which again, not many guys are. So it's not like that's necessarily a big thing for him. But again, really, it didn't get a lot of surprises out of me. Like Willis throwing the ball real far. Yeah, of course.
Yep.
That's, Strong throwing the ball real
Kenny
far.
Pickett not throwing the ball real far.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. we knew this. Like this is stuff that we knew. Nothing to me at this point, especially with the quarterbacks and for most positions too. Nothing that they showed this week is going to really sway anything for me, because I'm just, again, with this class, Do I think there's some guys that have the talent level in them to be a good player? Sure. But do any of them have everything that you're looking for to be a slam dunk first round quarterback? No. None of them have all the traits that you're looking for. Like, yeah, Pickett could be a solid starter for a while, but I think that's the maximum you're going to get out of him is he's a solid starter for a while. Willis is a guy that if he goes to the right place, and we, a lot of people talk about fit at quarterback is more important than talent sometimes, and that's true. If he goes to the right place, he could be a Pro Bowl caliber player. If he goes to a place that doesn't let him develop properly or doesn't get what they need around him, he's very likely going to flame out very fast. Like, that's just kind of what it is. And I don't know if the Steelers, like, we're in a good place from an organizational standpoint, but do I trust the offensive coaching to coach him up? Do I trust that the guys we have in place on offense right now are going to be the guys 5 years from now as he's developing more as a player? Maybe not. So I don't think it's a good fit at this point where we're at.
Yeah, and here's the other thing is like, regardless of what we think of them, it seems like the NFL likes these guys a lot based on their personality makeup and how they've done well in the interviews. So
yeah, for sure.
And the NFL teams know what these guys are on film. Like they get that Willis is the high risk, high reward guy. They get Pickett is the exact inverse of that. But I think it was on the NFL draft, the Athletic NFL draft, the Athletic NFL podcast, which was doing their draft show with Dwayne Burgh, and he was saying that teams are pretty consensually saying that their top quarterbacks are Pickett or Willis, and it's like kind of what do you value, and it's all about the polls. And like we talked about this with Sam Howell, whereas like I like that little mix of both, but it seems like teams, either want the big gamble or the sure thing and nothing in between. And I think those two guys I don't think they're going to blast the Steelers is my point. And I don't think the Steelers are going to try to trade up to get them because I think they know that these quarterbacks are most likely not going to be their long-term start. They're long-term franchise quarterbacks. And, Kevin Colbert said, I think there's a few guys that are starters in this draft. He said that. He didn't say franchise quarterbacks, and he didn't say like, starting in this league for a very long time or something, or starting at a high level or whatever. Like
the wording he chose.
I think I saw somebody say like Kevin Colbert said that and was like, oh, that's Malik Willis. It's like, what? That is such a leap. And it's like, I mean, anybody is tying any quarterback they can to the Steelers. I mean, we've seen it with the guys who are already in the league. We've seen it with every quarterback in this draft. There's been all this Trubisky talk as of late about him getting absolutely paid this offseason. So maybe that's not the option anymore because I wanted him cheap. But yeah, it's just I think it's just gone off the track. Anybody else that you want to talk about from the combine or any other storylines from there?
Really, the only thing I want to say, and this is just something that I'm probably going to eventually tweet out as I'm gotten around to it. I personally think that the kid out of Virginia Tech that ran like the stupid fast 40,
Amari
Barno. Here's what you do with him. Play him at gunner on special teams, just because that would be so funny. Imagine a 240-pound guy with 400. That's a legit mid 4.3 guy just running on punts and kicks.
I mean, that's what he's gonna. I mean, because he is so light, like he's 246, like, and he's not the best on rundowns. That was evident at the Senior Bowl.
Oh yeah,
like that's what you draft athletic freaks specifically for special teams. Like that's how Darius Hayward Bay had such a long tenure with the Steelers, because he was like an excellent gunner because of his speed. And I remember seeing this thing where it's like, in order to be a gunner on special teams, you have to have like speed and length. And in like every gunner on special teams is tall, long, and is very fast. And like with Barno, probably it would be funny to see him on the far outside of punt team.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Yeah,
because I just think it'd be comical to watch like somebody go out there and be like, I have to try to keep this guy from running down the field. But yeah, that was just kind of a note. I'm like, I don't know how good of a player he'll ever be on defense or if he'll ever make an impact there, but just put him in like weird, funny positions to just run fast down the field.
Yeah, I mean that's basically this is going to be the story with every player at this combine, because everybody ran super fast. But that'll do it for us for this episode. We will probably be back, I guess, next week. Maybe now I guess free agency starts next week, so maybe we'll kind of see what news is brewing there and then if anything happens on the quarterback trade market, which I hope it doesn't.
Yeah, me either. I don't want to give up assets for anybody that's actually legitimately available. Let me put it that way. Like, because there's the Rodgers news we already talked about, which is not going to be a thing. There's absolutely. But outside of that, like no one else that's not going to be able just to be signed. Not a big fan of
absolutely
trading for anything.
All right. Well, in that In that case, Shayne, let people know where they can find you and your work.
They'll find me at Shayne Kubis on Twitter and at around the Block Steelers, just ATB Steelers on Twitter as well. I'm probably going to have or try to have some free agency stuff specifically going up there, like if there's any news or talking about that as that comes out next week after we get done with the combine now today. And that's about it for me.
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLF on Twitter, which if you're watching this, that's most likely where you're watching it from.
Yep.
If you're not, you're watching it from Steelers ATB. And if you're listening on the podcast, make sure you're following that platform, following Around the Block on Twitch, on YouTube, on Twitter. We have our new The Block show debuting kind of as we speak.
Yeah, it should be on pretty much right now.
Yeah, which is our YouTube show, which kind of covers everything. Shayne will actually be jumping off of this onto that very soon.
Yeah, I got baseball, so we get to talk about a sport that's not even happening right now.
Oh, that sounds extremely not fun. So
yeah, we'll see.
With that, thank you all for tuning in. We hope to have you back next time.